Hi, my name is Coral Hahn, and I would like to address in this video the topic of Standing Rock. Now, I have seen the cover, I've YouTubed it. I've been keeping, once I knew about it, I've been kind of keeping tabs on it a bit. And the coverage I most see is, and nothing against it at all. There are very good PSA about public service announcements about being water protectors instead of protesters. People like Susan Sarandon and other celebrities have gotten on board with this issue. I think that's terrific. That's great. I myself want to present some, and I have kind of flooded my Eternal Feather Film Facebook page, etc., with these articles that I started reading, because I was like, okay, Susan Sarandon was saying, like, oh, it's, the media doesn't think it's sexy enough to cover, that was her wording, the word sexy, but, I was like, okay, so what can I do? There are, and I do want to support, financially, their legal representation is one need right now. I support their suit of this company that is building or wants to build the Dakota Pipeline. But I want to start when I first heard about it. I was concerned. And I was like, okay, this is a big issue, but I wasn't seeing why, and I don't have, granted, I don't have a TV, so I don't know what news broadcasts have been done about this at all. So just as on my YouTube channel, I just want to share some stats, just to put it in perspective, for those of you who haven't visited my Eternal Feather Film Facebook page and all that. There's articles on there that you can find this on Google. If you go and Google, like, and you read about this stuff, but just to put things a little bit side by side, my hope with this video is to present people with the opportunity, when we raise our voices, when enough of us raise our voices, things change. When we do something, when we help out, there is included on, I think, if I haven't, I will put it on there on my Eternal Feather Film page. There was the petition website where you can go on if you want to go to Standing Rock and help camp out and support there, or if you can financially give to the legal their legal needs for representation, etc. There is that website that will direct you to that if you're wondering how you can help. But you can help also on YouTube. I want to encourage you, if you are an environmentalist and you feel, or you can't financially go to Standing Rock or whatever, and you're like, what can I do? If you have a YouTube channel, here's one of my thoughts. Like, I'm going to share a little bit about why water is important to me. So this whole thing is important to water, and the protection of the United States of America. A lot of people, I'm going to go into this in a second, but why, make it personal, not funny, but serious, like how a story with water, just a personal story with water that, and I'm not talking about silly stuff like in the shower or whatever, but just like, for example, like, oh, I fainted, and like how water is healing, how, like if maybe you were out camping or hiking, and you have a survival story, so to speak, and how water is important because our bodies are made up of like 70 to 75% water. Thank goodness we're not made up of 70 to 75%, soda. Think of how silly, maybe some of us would be red or orange or purple, I don't know. But that whole, I don't know, but, that idea of water is important to us, and it refreshes our brain. So why is Standing Rock important? Okay, it's important to me because prior to even being born, my great-grandfather painted, or drew, rather, a painting that I inherited after my grandfather had passed away. My great-grandfather was a cartoonist, but prior to being a cartoonist and providing a number of, from what I understand, covers for the New Yorker magazine, etc., he was, worked every day, but he has this drawing, this painting of the way, he was fascinated back at the turn of the beginning 1900s and late 1800s, which would be his era, of when just after the near genocide of the Native Americans of this country, the white folks just wanted to wipe them out, and there was still, I'm sure, that mentality of like the devalue that not a lot of people saw the value in that people and their way of life, but he did, and he painted this beautiful. I'll have to show you another time. It's in my storage, but it's just this beautiful painting in I think pastel or something, like it's just the native way of life he saw as beautiful in a time when most people didn't, and it saddens me but also encourages me that it saddens me because it's the pipeline and the greed of corporation is still going on today, and the prejudice of putting this pipeline, and it's not the only pipeline, but that does this, but the idea of, oh well, these are poor neighborhoods, and these are just the lack of care for people, particularly natives, but for really everybody. And it also encourages me because we have the chance to make a difference and to say, like, no more disrespect to their native lands, no more disrespect for us being water drinkers. Hopefully most of us drink, like, the recommended 8 glasses a day. And just to say, like I had said in my, I kind of like this sentence. I'm a writer, and I was like, oh, that's a good sentence. In my writing, I said, I don't want to hear, I don't want to hear, or I'm tired of hearing the word oopsie in our eco vocabulary. So I thought, I was like, pass that along, no more oopsie in our eco vocabulary, but catches on. But, so my personal history with Native American people really started before I was even born, but I had personal when I was born, I then experienced in grade school just a taste. I'm not comparing myself to, the people who went to boarding school. What happened there was terrible. But I kind of got a little itty-bitty taste of what it was like to know who you are inside. And, for example, just to kind of tell the story, I wanted to, at Thanksgiving, it was 1st or 2nd grade, and we were to either dress up like Native American or Pilgrim and kind of study that culture and, grow an appreciation of it or whatever, and be that for Thanksgiving for a day or whatever. And so I was like, I want to run through the grass. This was me. I want to run through the grass. I want to yelp my work right. That was who I am inside. Like that, I may be white on the outside, but I have a very Native heart. And so just that joy of, loving nature and loving God's creation. But I was stuck I was put into a black dress as a pilgrim, and you had to wear like this white cap, like bonnet. I hated the white bonnet. I kept taking it off. They told me I had to keep it on. It was like made of cardboard or like construction paper, and it rubbed against my ear, and I couldn't hear that well. It's muffled, and I'm like, I kept thinking, I hate this, this is not me, sense. And so, like, later when I learned a little bit about, the boarding school and what was going on, I was like, that is terrible. That should not have happened. People shouldn't be treated like that. And so, not that I was abused or anything of that manner, but just the fact that I know who I was, but I was stuck in I was put into a different culture and told this was what I had to be like just for one day. I mean, imagine if you had to go through that like year after year after year. And so, that was just a little taste. And then in high school, I had a Native American friend who introduced me to that culture. And then later in college, my first year of college, Richard Twist spoke at my college. And then I got to know the band Jonathan Markle and Broken Walls. And then of all things, so I went the first year of college to, it was a college in Minnesota. And so then after that, I decided to challenge myself academically, and so I went to Pennsylvania to a much bigger college. And apparently, I view this as God's working in my life, to the appreciation of the Native culture, and totally different, college and a bigger college, and who should appear the next year as a guest speaker but Richard Twist. And I'm like, I wonder if this is, this seems to be a recurring theme in my life, so like I deeply respect the Native culture, and it really upset me, and it upsets me that this pipeline, that the corporation, I won't make it a racial issue, the corporation is greedily saying, arguing against, like, oh, we found nothing sacred, in this land or whatever, and debating that whole debate. And I was like, you know what? They were here first, and there's just such a lack of respect. And then when I saw, like, as I'm keeping up with this, then I saw the people, the police and stuff coming in against protesters with guns and tanks. Are you kidding me? These people, and there's this whole petty thing about violence, and I'm like, these people were telling you they're unarmed, and thank God nobody was shot. That was my, major concern, and I was like crying, I'm just like crying out. I'm like, God, please protect these people, no matter what race they are. People are coming together as protesting this, which is good and right. And I'm like, I've seen so much with the, killing of, the black people by police officers and stuff. And I'm just being like, I can't, I don't know how much more violence, not that we should have a capacity for it, but just, it was like, enough, please don't allow anybody to get hurt. It distressed me, and, I know we're, as Christians, told not to worry, but it just was deeply on my heart, and it is still deeply on my heart, obviously. It's not just a past thing. I'm actively, keeping up with this as much as I can. So, when I grew up on the East Coast with the Chesapeake Bay, and I'm sorry about redundancy for people who have read my posts on Eternal Feather Film Facebook page, but, just a bit of background. I grew up on the East Coast around the Chesapeake Bay, and I even did a science project, in school about, because growing up, there was plenty of PSAs and there was plenty of attention to the need for clean water, because we'd reached a point where we're going, oh crap, because we're realizing that we upset the balance in the ecosystem. There was nothing to filter the water, like mussels, clams, the filtering creatures in the ecosystem, and the grasses in the estuary were dying, and so we had like thing after thing after thing, like with kids planting trees in school, like people, replanting grasses in the Chesapeake, and all, trying to help the environment was very big growing up at the Chesapeake Bay in particular. And then I came over to the West Coast, and although I didn't live in San Francisco, I was aware that that was and still is still an issue of attention being to cleaning up the bay. So seeing that, and then doing a little bit of Google research, I'm just like, it blows my mind how we're treating this. Although I do see how some people may think, oh well, doesn't apply to me or whatever. Like, how does somewhere in the middle of the U.S. affect me? Well, let's delve into that a little bit. I did not only some research of Google articles, but I also did, I watched some YouTube videos of like the rivers of the U.S. I looked up maps, like, so I want to share some statistics and stuff with you. Where the river, the Missouri and Mississippi, is one of the YouTube videos, two of the YouTube videos. One of them called it the breadbasket of America, which I think is a general term used for that area. But also one of the people in the documentary on the power of the, I think it's called the power of the river, talking about the Mississippi River in particular, which flows, the Missouri flows down into the Mississippi, which goes into the Gulf of Mexico. Very poetically and very accurately, the person called it, compared it to an artery. Not just a tendon or a nerve, but an artery, because it's such a huge river. And so when I started hearing about Standing Rock, I thought, well, went back before I started researching all this, I was thinking, well, I do understand how they're upset about it crossing native lands. I'm upset about that too, but I was like, okay, so they're upset about it going underneath a river. And so in my mind, before I researched it, I was like, so what's the big deal about just like going under the river at one point? That wouldn't cause that much damage. So then I got online and I started researching this and saw the maps of the path of the pipeline is going, and I still am learning about this, so it's either going like right parallel to the river of the Missouri, or like under. I don't know if that's what they meant by going under the river, but either way, that's, holy cow. I started seeing, this is why it's such a big deal. Wow. Because I started losing count after 10 cities along the Missouri River. I was like, this is going to affect a lot of people. And not just in the cities, but I mean, you're talking about country that most likely crops are grown. It's I think they call it the watershed. Watershed in America. So I looked up the Center for Effective Government had an article by Amanda Starbuck, if you want to Google that or look at my Facebook Eternal Feather Film page. It had a map within the past 5 years. Within the past 5 years alone, all the oil pipeline spills within the United States. So it's like tons of red dots. So you can see that just within the past 5 years. So, the Chicago Tribune, they're gathering from federal data. They quoted, since 1995, there's been 2,000 significant accidents. So it's still, I'm still searching for a number on the insignificant accidents, but we know at least that there's 2,000 significant accidents within the past, I believe it was 21 years, since 1995. And in the same article, I noted that the problem with the pipeline is because it goes along or under the river, whatever their plans are, near or below the river, it's not just one point where it'd be like contained a little bit that it would grow and people would be like, oh, what's that black spot, with all the oil or whatever, grow, you could see it growing and put like a stopper on it. It's like there's multiple points where it could leak. Multiple points where it could leak. And because the material that the pipelines work with is highly corrosive, and they're spending so much money to find better ways or better materials or whatever, but still, they're claiming, this Dakota Pipeline Company and others, have taken the stance of, oh, we have control over it. There's not enough to have 2,000 mistakes, probably over. That's just the significant accidents in the Chicago Tribune article. And let's see. So there was a accident in Marshall, Michigan, I believe, that was leaking 17 hours before it was discovered. So that's just before it was discovered. So then when you discover it, then you have to implement plans on how to stop it, etc., etc., etc. So it's still pumping out. And it pumps, through the pipeline at 4 to 5 miles per hour. Now, I haven't the stats on the Missouri River, but the Mississippi River on the National Park Service FAQ, stats about the Mississippi River, it's 2,300 to 2,350 feet long and averages a speed of 1.2 miles per hour. Now, the breadbasket, also on this site about the National Park Service, I was noting, again, as I reread this tonight, the watershed with the Mississippi, it covers like 40% of the USA. So, this is big. This is very big, and people are admirably PSA, we're water protectors, making it an issue, but not a lot of, like I said, I haven't been keeping up with the news. I don't have a TV, but I haven't seen Standing Rock articles their main focus with the media is like Obama and political and all the legal aspects of it, but I haven't seen a whole lot of statistics. So I'm bringing that to the table here. The where I get the 4.5 miles per hour with the pipeline, that was on Colpipe. That's COLPIPE.com under their FAQ. So just imagine for a second, and it's, as an artist, I'm not a mathematician, but to me, logically, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say this is going to be a huge problem. You're putting a pipeline either close to or under a river that will affect multiple cities, is within a watershed that covers 40% of America, where a lot of farms are, a lot of fields, a lot of produce, a lot of, I don't know, wheat for bread, corn, and people are saying, oh, well, that doesn't, Standing Rock doesn't affect me, or, it's just a bunch of people, and that's, forgive me, that's what I thought at first, not that it didn't affect me, or whatever, but just like, I was like, oh, that, that's great, there's a bunch of people praying and, protesting, good, but then I really researched this and started researching this, and I'm like, this is so much bigger than just a few protesters. This needs to be told on social media why this is important. That people shouldn't take the stance, oh, well, this doesn't affect me. It's our water. And having had, I want to say, I've had 2 friends in particular who have died from cancer, and not that I don't know, I'm still researching this, but there was an accident with another pipeline that there was something having to do with cancer, because people drank the water, or whatever. There was something having to do with cancer there, and I was like, that caught my attention. I was like, people are affected. If your oil pipeline is going into the water and you're putting it like along a route of a river, you don't have, they are claiming control. They're claiming, oh, it's no big deal. These corporations and the people who have their agenda with their money and stuff, and pressure needs to be put on, to support these people who are praying, who are protesting, who are caring about you, not just them, but you and me, and I wholeheartedly support this. So the average, there was an article, it was the Chicago Tribune article. They were saying, it wasn't their exact wording, but basically pipelines are typically inspected every 5 years. So I'm thinking every 5 years, and yet there's a map according to the where was it? The Center for Effective Government, with a map over the past 5 years of 2000. I'm sorry. No, that was another article. I'm sorry. There was a. I'm sorry. Let me start over with that. So they're typically inspected, average of 5 years. But in the past 5 years, in this map of the oil pipeline spills, by the Center of Effective Government article, it was showing many, it was like a lot of red dots. I couldn't count them all. And so I'm thinking, we really need to stop saying oops when it comes to our eco vocabulary and start using cars less, like using less cars, less oil. The demand for oil, crude oil, comes from us. So like we need to care about our planet and find, and demand and insist, of alternative, eco-friendly energy, and invent and create something better. Because if we keep this up, our planet isn't, and we are going to reap the bad consequences for being lazy and being silent on such issues, particularly water, because we all need water. So this pipeline, just to end with a thing that kind of put it in perspective for me, was under the DAPLpipelinefacts.com. It was listed that this Dakota Pipeline investment, they estimated at $3.7 billion. Now, put that alongside where is it? I'm looking for it. Goodness, I wrote it down somewhere. Oh, here it is. In the Chicago Tribune article, in the past 21 years, since 1995, $3 billion has been spent on property damage. Now that's just property damage alone. Just property damage. And there's an unknown number as of yet that I still don't have on things like eco cleanup, helping the animals and the environment and all that jazz. So that number is just for property damage. So $3 billion for property damage, plus another, it's been estimated a $2.1 billion spent on research for improving these easily corroded pipelines. I'm thinking, when are we going to learn our lesson? When it's too late? When, like, the oil leaks from the Missouri at multiple prone points and flows down into the Mississippi and quite possibly the Gulf of Mexico. Like, when are we going to start caring about our planet, like, and the water that's in it, and help manage it better, and say no to these corporations like the Dakota Pipeline, etc., who have their own agenda, but we're not help. We need to help find better ways of energy and things to maintain our planet because it does. It's very, very ignorant to say, like, to take the attitude when it comes to the environment like this, to say, oh, that only affects other people, or that's, we're always either affected directly or indirectly. So we need to start to flood the social media. We need to make our voice known, educate, say, oh, I found this article and it says this and this and this about, like, not just oil pipelines, but, really, like, stand with Standing Rock. And please, I hope this has given you some food for thought. and encourages you to not just listen to me, but to say, you know, I believe this too. I'm going to share about this too. And I'm going to say why water is important to me, why the earth is important to me, and no more. No more too late. No more oopsies. No more, you know, as an American, as a person on this planet, you know, I want to live better, and I want others to live better. So, all right. Bye for now.